Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, reminding you that the ClassicsToday.com swag and merchandise shop is open for business. Go over to ClassicsToday.com. Look in the upper right-hand corner of our homepage and get fabulous t-shirts like this one. There we go. I've done my plug. Now, one of you suggested, because it's still available, believe it or not, that I talk about this. The Martinon box, which is upside down or sideways. There, the Martinon icon box. That's what this is. Yes, I thought it was gone forever, but it's not. It's still available. It is such an important, amazing set. Let me tell you a little story. Martinon, if you may recall, Jean Martinon, the fabulous French conductor, began his life as a Decca artist, recording with both the London Symphony and the Paris Conservatory Orchestra. And there's like a little box, 7 CDs or so worth of stuff that he did for Decca way back in the early 50s. I mean, there was some mono stuff and some stereo stuff. That was his sort of recorded legacy beginning. But what makes this so interesting is I was reading the back of a liner note back in the old LP days. I had like his Shostakovich First Symphony or something like that. He did all kinds of stuff, Dvorak's Symphonic Dances. Most of it was great. But there was a liner note by the producer who was Ray Minshall. And he was talking about Martinon. And he said, well, Martinon, he started off in France. And then he had an unsuccessful period for a few years in Chicago. Then he went back to France and no one knows what became of him. It was like the dumbest comment. I just remember going, ah! Even then when I was like a little kid, I knew what became of him. What became of him was this. He went back to France and he basically recorded the entire 20th century marvelous, splendid French repertoire. That's what he did. And these are outstanding recordings. There's 14 discs. Now, essentially, there are two ways to do boxes like this. One way is to make big boxes of the original jackets type. And those original jackets, some people really value original jackets. I don't really care about original jackets because most of the time the jackets were absolutely hideous. And beyond that, what happens when they do original jackets, as often as not, is they do original couplings, which means you get very short playing times and many, many, many more discs than are necessary. These 14 discs are all 70 plus minutes. Well, one is 67, but they're all between like 75 and 80 minutes in playing time, which is fantastic because you get the equivalent of like 3 times as many LPs on each CD, or twice as many LPs on each CD. So these 14 discs are really probably the equivalent of at least 25 or 30 LPs, and it's very inexpensive. And I kind of like that proposal, much more importantly than worrying about original jackets. So let's just go through the repertoire here, because this is just stuff here that no one else has done, or that has only been remade in the insane current period when everything was being recorded by everybody all the time. But basically, for decades, this was the only way to get this stuff. And the performances are top-notch. And the recordings are a little variable because they range in dates from like the 60s, whatever. But who cares? I mean, this is such important material. And it's a thrill to be able to have it. It really is. So we're going to go through here. We have, fortunately, a track listing in the little bookie. And it's just amazing. This is just amazing. I mean, amazing repertoire. Essential, fabulous material. So first, we get Bacchus and Ariadne by Roussel, suites numbers 1 and 2, which is basically the entire ballet. And they are fabulously performed. Martinon was a student of Roussel, and his Roussel was always top-notch. Always, 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 always. It's amazingly great. And then we get the Spider's Feast and the Petite Suite. These are with the Orchestre Nationale de l'ORTF, which is just a way of stretching out these crazy orchestras' long names. It's radio and television, French radio and TV orchestra. Then we get Roussel Symphony No. 2, one of the great 20th century masterpieces in the symphonic literature. And this remains its reference recording, its version de référence. Yeah. Unbelievably great. And I've talked about it before anyway. And we get the tone poem Pour une fête de printemps, which is marvelous. And then we have the third symphony. These are just tremendous performances. I mean, really, really, reference editions. And then we have Roussel's ballet Aeneas, which still never gets recorded. No one cares about. It's a ballet with chorus. It's in his spiky late mode, and it's essential to our understanding of Roussel's ballet music. His three great ballets, Bacchus and Ariadne, and The Spider's Feast, and this one, Aeneas. And then we have the Cachetorian Flute Concerto with Jean-Pierre Rampal, which of course everybody wants to hear with Aeneas. The Cachetorian Flute Concerto is actually the Cachetorian Violin Concerto, only, as you may have guessed, played on a flute. And if you like it that way, more power to you. I think it's kind of ridiculous. Anyway, then we have Pierné. Ooh, Suite number 1 from Cydalise et le Chèvrepied, which is Cydalise and the Satyr, or whatever those things are, with goat's feet. And that's such a beautiful, gorgeous, wonderful, delicious ballet. And this is, as good a performance of the suite, the extended first suite, it's long, that you will ever hear. And then we have the Concertstück for harp and orchestra. Oh, that's so beautiful. That's so wonderful. Pierné is such a fine composer. He didn't write a ton of music, but what he did write is really top-notch. Absolutely great. And the Divertissement sur un thème pastoral, a lovely little thing. And the Poulenc Organ and Strings Concerto, Organ, Strings, and Timpani, with Marie-Claire Alain. This is all with the ORTF, orchestre. It's wonderful. And the Poulenc Concert Champêtre with Robert Véron-Lacroix. Very, very fine performance, often overlooked in the discography of the work, but it's good. It's one of the few that has sort of the right balances between the harpsichord and the orchestra. And then we have Marcel Landowski's Symphony number 2 and Piano Concerto number 2 with Annie Darko, who I actually know because she did Beethoven's Third Piano Concerto with the Johns Hopkins Symphony Orchestra when I was in it. So that was kind of exciting. She came and was giving real concerts, and she did one with us. Anyway, it's really kind of fascinating to listen to Marcel Landowski. He sounds kind of like Honegger, a sort of modernized Honegger, if you're French, because Landowski was the French Minister of Culture for a billion years and controlled the whole country musically. And his big enemy was Boulez, and Boulez won that particular rivalry. But anyway, so Landowski was a composer. He could get all of his music played because he was the Minister of Culture. And he did, and that's one of his symphonies. It's not bad. It's not bad at all. Short, perky, 3 movements, it gets the job done. Saint-Saëns Organ Symphony with Marie-Claire Alain, first class. The Danse Macabre, Le Rouet d'Omphale, and that stuff. Then we get to Chausson Poème with Itzhak Perlman. That was always on EMI. It's in every Perlman edition. It was a coupling to Saint-Saëns' Third Violin Concerto and French violin stuff generally. Then we had César Franck, the Symphony in D minor and the Symphonic Variations with Philippe Entremont. I mean, these are all wonderful. And Dukas, La Pairie, which is glorious. We're already up to disc 8. More Dukas, The Sorcerer's Apprentice. Piece it's very, very hard to do, that you could always count on Martinon to just bring home the bacon. Fabulous. And the Polyeucte Overture and the Symphony in C. Oh, is that an underrated piece? What a beautiful, beautiful work. It's got some great tunes in it. Da-da-da-dum, ba-dum, ba-dum, ba-da-da-da-dum, ba-da. That's the cadence theme to the first movement exposition, in case anyone is asking you. I mean, go hum your Dukas Symphony in C and impress your friends. Well, if you have some strange friends. And then we have the introduction to Act 2 of the opera, Ariadne et Barbe Bleue. And now we have Honegger, Pacific 231, Pastoral d'été, Rugby, and the Christmas Cantata, which is lovely. Absolutely lovely. If you don't know Honegger's Christmas Cantata, you're missing out on one of the most beautiful holiday works that never gets played. And it deserves to be. Then Ibert, Overture de Fête and Escale. And let's see. Oh, and the Tropisme pour des amours imaginaires. I mean, what's life without your tropism? You got to get your tropism. It's fantastic. I mean, who else did this stuff? That's the point. I mean, this is all this unusual French repertoire, and here it all is in one handy box, fabulously performed. And then we've got Florence Schmitt. This was such a hot disc. Oh, boy. Still the best ever performance of La Tragédie de Salomé, that epic 25-minute long panting and heaving tone poem hysteria piece, and the even more hysterical and crazy Psalm 150, or Psalm 47 actually. I don't know, I think it's also 150 and some other numbering. I never get it right. But it's Psalm 47, which is just an exordium, this huge, praise and scream about God thing. And it's just with an organ and soprano solo. And what a glorious record this was. It was amazing, really, and just sort of hard to find for a long time, and a classic. An absolute classic. Then we have the Berlioz Symphony Fantastique and Lelio, and they're both marvelous performances. And then we have Tchaikovsky Symphony No. 2 with Sylvia Kirsenbaum. Not exactly a work that we hear done every day, but this is a very nice performance of it. And Brahms, the Tragic Overture. And Berlioz, orchestral excerpts from the Damnation of Faust. And Schumann's Fourth Symphony. This is the Orchestre Mondial des Jeunesses Musicales. So this is like, these are live recordings and radio things and whatnot. And the Miraculous Mandarin, which he also did in Chicago fabulously. And if this isn't quite as good, he still knows it cold. The Lalo Symphony Espagnole. This is disc 14 with David Oistrakh and the Philharmonia, which is a classic. And a live recording, or sort of a broadcast recording, of Faya, the complete three-cornered hat. Extremely well done, and not one of the usual sort of Martinon discography pieces. Beautiful performance. Absolutely beautiful. So that's it. How's that for a quickie? I got through it really quickly. 14 discs of not Schumann's Fourth and Tchaikovsky's Second Piano Concerto, but really unusual, first-class, fabulous French 20th century repertoire that everyone in the universe needs, which means that everyone in the universe needs to buy this box. Let me put the booklet back of the box. So the covers are the same. It doesn't make any difference. Here's the box. And like I said, well-filled CDs, 75 to 80 minutes a pop, and just outstanding performances. I mean, I don't need to talk about it anymore. That's the deal. Get your Martinon box. It's still around. Get it while you can. Just get it. And savor it slowly once you do. You will be so happy if you don't have this, that you've added it to your collection. It is first-rate and essential. So keep on listening, folks. Thanks for joining me. Take care.